My parents deliberately chose to skip my wedding because I married before my perfect golden child sister, and now their carefully crafted image of a flawless family is crumbling as relatives finally see the truth behind years of favoritism. My parents chose to miss my wedding, a direct consequence of my marrying ahead of my seemingly flawless sister. Now, their carefully cultivated image of a perfect family is finally beginning to unravel. 8 months ago, at 32 years old, I exchanged vows with my partner after 4 years together. Every guest attended, save for my parents and my sister, Molin, who is 30. While my parents' choice to forego the celebration was indeed astonishing, my sister's non-attendance caused less surprise, given our historically strained relationship. Nevertheless, reflecting on our shared history, I perhaps should have foreseen her absence. Allow me to provide some context regarding our family's unique dynamics. It's difficult to fully fault my parents for their consistent preference for my sister throughout our lives. Molin was, quite frankly, remarkably proficient at nearly everything. She commanded the spotlight in every setting she entered. From the moment she could walk, she excelled, clinching victory in every elementary school spelling bee, science fair, and talent show. High school followed a similar pattern, with her securing roles as class president, valedictorian, and prom queen. Blessed with height, a slender build, and inherent attractiveness, she pursued modeling during her college years before dedicating herself to her business degree. Her first modeling contract arrived in her sophomore year, an event vividly etched in my memory. To commemorate it, my parents hosted an extravagant party, inviting all our relatives and her friends. Her initial professional headshot was proudly displayed, framed and hung above our living room fireplace, where it remains even now. That same year, I earned my computer science degree. Their response? A mere muttered, "Well done," before they swiftly resumed planning Molin's next photo shoot. Upon graduation, she promptly secured a position at a prestigious firm and rapidly ascended the corporate ranks. At just 30, she commands a corner office and a company car, holding the title of senior executive. Meanwhile, I'm employed as a mid-level software developer at a reputable computer company. While I find satisfaction in my work, and it's a solid career, it's hardly the kind of occupation that prompts parental boasts within the family circle. Furthermore, I am physically larger and shorter than my sister. Growing up, my mother frequently made unkind remarks about my physique, enrolled me in unwanted exercise classes, and consistently put me on various diets. She would often comment, "Molin never struggles with her weight," or "You could look just as lovely as your sister if you simply applied a little more effort." Though I had learned to disregard these comments by high school, their cumulative effect was undeniable. Over the years, I've come to terms with these disparities. Ultimately, I accepted that my parents simply never celebrated my accomplishments with the same enthusiasm they reserved for Molin. What alternative did I truly have? For years, I pursued their approval, attending recommended classes, joining encouraged clubs, and even briefly attempting modeling, a short-lived endeavor my sister never fails to remind me of. Yet, nothing was ever enough. I was merely the secondary daughter, and they remained completely captivated by my sister's successes. In my mid-20s, I abandoned the quest to impress them. I shifted my focus to building my own life, advancing professionally on my own terms, and cultivating connections with individuals who genuinely valued me for who I am. To be candid, things significantly improved after that decision. Recognizing my parents' constant preoccupation with maintaining appearances, I maintained superficial interactions with them to avoid conflict. During our obligatory Christmas gatherings and other family get-togethers, I would simply nod and smile as they enthused about Molin's latest career triumph, romantic partner, or exotic vacation. Immersed in their adoration for Molin, they seemed oblivious to my emotional detachment. Subsequently, at a computer conference, I encountered my future husband through a shared acquaintance. He truly noticed me, a stark contrast to my family. He appreciated my subtle humor, my aptitude for coding, and yes, even my physique. From our initial interactions, he never once suggested I alter myself or drew comparisons to others. After 4 years of courtship, he proposed to me while we were simply at home, enjoying takeout and our preferred television program. It was a perfect, unadorned moment. Naturally, I shared the news of my engagement with my parents last year. Their reaction should have been my initial indication. There were no felicitations, just a palpable silence. My mother then queried if I was absolutely sure I wished to rush into marriage, delicately suggesting I might consider enhancing my physical appearance prior to the ceremony. My father remained largely quiet. At our engagement party, my husband observed their peculiar behavior, though I was too overwhelmed by anxiety to fully grasp it then. They spent most of the evening huddled in a corner, engrossed in my mother's phone. Later, my husband disclosed that he had overheard them conversing with Molin, who was audibly distressed. They discussed how this development was unforeseen and how they had never anticipated Rebecca marrying first, based on what he vaguely discerned. Even during the wedding planning phase, we encountered several minor obstacles. Even though Molin was not yet engaged, my mother had already curated numerous wedding Pinterest boards for her and displayed no inclination to help me choose my own gown or venue. When I finally selected my dress, a simple yet elegant A-line gown that truly made me feel beautiful, my mother's sole comment was that it appeared practical and appropriate for my physique. My wonderful future mother-in-law, who embraced me as the daughter she never had, and I ultimately managed most of the arrangements ourselves. My husband and I meticulously reviewed and cross-referenced the guest list to ensure no one was inadvertently omitted before dispatching both digital and physical wedding invitations. I am unequivocally certain my parents received their invitations, as the electronic versions included red receipts. Upon realizing they had not RSVP'd, I contacted them repeatedly via calls, texts, and emails. My messages were either completely disregarded or met with vague replies about their demanding schedules and needing to verify availability. I couldn't afford to expend excessive energy on this concern, being fully immersed in my own wedding preparations. My in-laws proved exceptionally supportive, extending help with everything from seating charts to floral displays. Even at the delightful bridal shower hosted by my husband's sister, the conspicuous absence of my own immediate family was a palpable void. Yet it was respectfully left unmentioned. Despite my parents' absence, the wedding day itself unfolded beautifully. We hosted a relaxed afternoon reception following a morning ceremony in a picturesque garden. Everyone was correct in observing how genuinely content and deeply in love we appeared. Yet, there were moments when their non-attendance felt like a profound physical ache. For instance, upon seeing the vacant front row seats or during the father-daughter dance, an experience I was tragically unable to share. Following our honeymoon and the initial wedding glow, I began to search for explanations. When I eventually reached them by phone, they claimed to be profoundly hurt, asserting they had never received a formal invitation. My mother immediately unleashed a verbose tirade about my supposed carelessness, recounting her lifelong desire to assist in planning her daughter's weddings and expressing her inability to fathom why I would exclude them from such a monumental event. This thoroughly bewildered me, as I was certain we had extended both digital and physical invitations. During the call, I consulted our records, confirming that we had indeed dispatched them. Even the physical invitation's delivery was verified. I chose not to challenge their attempts to manipulate my perception, instead offering a simple apology for the supposed oversight before ending the call. Subsequently, my husband recalled several instances that truly unveiled their underlying motives. He mentioned their look of surprise, rather than joy, when we announced our engagement, and their continuous invention of excuses to avoid assisting with the wedding preparations. He hadn't raised these observations earlier, opting not to heighten my stress during the planning phase. Yet, in hindsight, the pattern was unmistakably clear. The notion of me, the less celebrated daughter, marrying before their cherished Molin, proved utterly intolerable. Their conduct merely affirmed a long-held suspicion I had suppressed, that I would never measure up to my sister in their estimation. The most disheartening realization was that even my wedding day, a time meant for celebrating love and new beginnings, had devolved into yet another battlefield in their relentless campaign to uphold their perfect family facade, with Molin at its very center. According to relatives I've connected with, in family group chats I typically avoid, Molin recently became engaged to her boyfriend of 1 year. My parents are openly vocalizing their enthusiasm about orchestrating an extravagant wedding for her. They are already proudly proclaiming their success in securing opulent venues and designer gowns, and my mother is accompanying Molin to exclusive fittings at high-end boutiques, all the mother-daughter experiences I was never afforded. Intriguingly, a significant portion of our family is now unexpectedly declining invitations to Molin's wedding and engagement party. My parents' conduct at my own wedding has evidently become a subject of widespread discussion among our relatives. When family members inquire about my parents' non-attendance at my nuptials, I simply convey what I believe to be the truth. They found it intolerable that I married before their cherished daughter. I present the facts as I perceive them, without exaggeration or any attempt to garner sympathy. A few days ago, my parents contacted me, accusing me of deliberately attempting to undermine Molin's wedding. They asserted that the relatives they've spoken with are fabricating excuses to bypass her wedding-related events. My sister, it turns out, confided in my cousin, who then relayed to her that people are hesitant to attend because they are aware of how my parents treated me. My parents contend that I am disseminating fabricated narratives out of envy for my sister's forthcoming lavish wedding. The reality, however, is that I am merely sharing the unvarnished truth of past events. Perhaps they ought to reflect on their own behavior rather than holding me accountable for the repercussions if the truth paints them in an unflattering light. As circumstances continue to evolve, I find it progressively more challenging to maintain the pretense of a relationship with my parents. Their actions surrounding my wedding ultimately brought home the realization that I would never be enough for them, irrespective of my efforts. Their absence at my wedding is no longer the most arduous part. It is accepting the painful fact that I never had the nurturing, supportive parents I always yearned for. Currently, I am dedicating my energy to building a life with someone who genuinely values me for who I am. I will, of course, provide updates should any notable developments occur. First update: 2 weeks have passed since my previous post, and much has unfolded. After reflecting on your encouraging comments, I ultimately resolved to confront my parents directly regarding their behavior at my wedding and their recent accusations that I deliberately sabotaged my sister's momentous day. When they began texting me about our blemished family narrative, my parents swiftly launched into a series of accusations during our subsequent phone call, claiming I harbored jealousy towards Molin and had meticulously orchestrated the entire situation. I then did something unprecedented. I agreed with them, though certainly not in the manner they had anticipated. Instead of my usual self-defense, I stated, "You are absolutely right. I am envious. But not of Molin's career, nor her accomplishments, nor her appearance. I am envious of the steadfast love and unwavering support you have consistently showered upon her, a level of affection you never even bothered to extend to me." A profound silence filled the line. My mother then began asserting I was exaggerating, insisting they had always treated us equitably. In that instant, something profound fractured within me. Years of suppressed emotions erupted forth. I recounted every birthday where Molin's latest triumph eclipsed my own achievements, recalling how my mother canceled my high school graduation dinner because Molin had a modeling callback and how her prom ensemble cost more than my entire year's college textbooks. I pressed on, undeterred by my father's attempts to interrupt and dismiss my claims as hyperbole. I spoke of the agony of witnessing them devote years to planning my sister's hypothetical wedding while demonstrating absolutely no interest in my actual one. I conveyed the profound pain of seeing my parents' seats vacant and how my mother-in-law had to step in for every aspect, from wedding preparations to dress selection. Their reaction was quite illuminating. They inverted the blame onto me rather than acknowledging any of my points. "Why did you never speak up if you felt this way?" my mother demanded, as if I hadn't attempted to communicate with them for years. My father added that by discussing these sentiments with other family members, I was being both unjust and malicious. At that juncture, my mother uttered a statement that crystallized everything. "We never imagined you would go to such extremes as to deliberately attempt to ruin Molin's wedding out of spite, but we always knew you were insecure about her success," she declared, adding, "This is not how we raised you." I suddenly comprehended that they were utterly incapable of hearing me. They genuinely believed that their actions and my feelings were entirely separate from the circumstances. Their primary concern remained Molin's reaction and her upcoming nuptials, not the profound hurt they had inflicted upon me. Even during this discussion about their absence from my wedding, I made no effort to mend anything. For the first time in my life, I neither recanted nor apologized. Instead, I conveyed my thoughts to them directly. "You are correct on one point. I was raised by you. You instilled in me the conviction that I would never measure up, that Molin's accomplishments would invariably be more significant than mine, and that preserving your ideal family image was paramount to my own feelings. However, you also inadvertently taught me that I deserve better than this, a lesson you never intended to impart." A prolonged silence preceded my father's response. He spoke in a composed, measured tone. "Perhaps it's time for us to cease portraying ourselves as inadequate parents, since you have already unequivocally decided that we are. And you clearly derive satisfaction from witnessing our distress. As family, we presumed you would help us resolve this matter, but it's evident you've made your own choices." The culminating blow was delivered by my mother. "Perhaps, Rebecca, you simply couldn't cope with not being the focal point of attention, even though we always endeavored to treat you both equitably. That is not our fault. You made the choice to assume the role of the victim." I chose not to engage in further debate. What purpose would it serve? Everything I had articulated had just been unequivocally confirmed by their own words. They were utterly incapable of acknowledging their involvement in any of it, even during this definitive discussion. I simply concluded the call with a goodbye. Surprisingly, I experienced a sense of profound relief afterward. Tears were certainly shed, but these were not the frantic, soul-crushing tears I recalled from my earlier years. These were liberating tears. For the first time, I had articulated everything I needed to express, without reservation or guilt regarding my emotions. Later, my husband found me on our back porch, gazing at the sunset. He joined me, taking my hand in his, offering silent support. "They're never going to change, are they?" I finally asked him. "No, but you have," he replied, gently squeezing my hand. "And that is what truly matters." He is absolutely right. I have changed. The anxious young child who frantically sought her parents' validation no longer exists. The woman who emerged from that final conversation no longer requires their affirmation. While acknowledging that my parents will never embody the supportive figures I yearned for is painful, it is far less agonizing than clinging to the elusive hope that they might transform. For the first time, I genuinely feel detached from whatever unfolds with my sister's wedding or the ensuing family drama. I have voiced my perspective, and now they must contend with the consequences of their actions. The most peculiar aspect of all this? I feel as though a lifelong burden has finally been lifted. Though it isn't the joyous resolution I had envisioned with my parents, perhaps it is the one I desperately needed, the freedom to cease striving for a love that should have been inherent. Second update. 3 days following my candid conversation with our parents, events have taken an astonishing turn. Mullen chose to insert herself into the unfolding drama, yet her strategy spectacularly backfired. Yesterday morning, my sister dispatched a carefully crafted message. Her long-standing condescending tone permeated the text. What you conveyed to your parents was utterly inappropriate. They have guided us through every phase of our lives and provided us with everything. You cannot simply accuse them of being inadequate parents merely because you are insecure about the choices you've made in your own life. She continued, blending her characteristic moral superiority with veiled criticisms. I comprehend that your wedding wasn't precisely as you had envisioned, but that does not justify your attempt to sabotage mine. There is absolutely nothing wrong with desiring a celebration that honors those of us who have genuinely strived to meet particular benchmarks, Rebecca. Not every aspect of life needs to be a competition. I chose not to respond. Through years of enduring her manipulative behavior, I've learned that engaging with her simply furnishes her with more ammunition. Instead, I promptly blocked her number. Mullen, however, has never tolerated being disregarded, so I anticipated this wouldn't be the final word. A few hours later, my husband, laughing uncontrollably, called me at work. Apparently, Mullen, unable to reach me directly, had located his personal number, likely through a mutual acquaintance, and deluged him with a series of texts precisely detailing why our sisterly relationship has always been fraught. Her initial communication to him began with sufficient professionalism. As Rebecca's sister and someone who deeply cares about our family's well-being, I feel compelled to reach out. However, it quickly devolved into her true agenda. She informed my husband that, as the new man in Rebecca's life, he had an obligation to help me behave in a more suitable manner. The subsequent messages became increasingly patronizing. Family dynamics are intricate, she lectured my husband, a professional software architect with an MBA, adding that someone with Rebecca's sensitivity might not grasp the larger context. She then advised him to help me see reason before I irrevocably damage family relationships. The genuine absurdity, though, was her attempt to exploit what she presumed were his social climbing aspirations. Indeed, she explicitly wrote, "Surely you understand that maintaining positive relationships with successful family members, like myself, could be highly advantageous for your future. Rebecca's behavior is only hindering her own prospects and, by extension, yours." My husband, always possessing the ability to discern Mullen's true nature, found her manipulative overture utterly hilarious. He was particularly amused by her assumption that her corporate standing or the prospect of networking opportunities would somehow impress him. In his own words, "She really doesn't know me at all, does she?" That evening, when I returned home, we reviewed the messages together. I found myself laughing alongside my husband, rather than feeling offended or distressed. Witnessing Mullen's deceptive tactics laid bare, especially when directed at someone so entirely immune to them, was truly liberating. This encounter yielded a significant insight about my sister. Despite all her accomplishments and apparent success, she remains that insecure adolescent who feels the need to diminish others to bolster her own sense of superiority. Her belief that she could control me by manipulating my husband when her direct approach failed clearly demonstrates her profound misunderstanding of genuine relationships. Her swift pivot to trying to weaponize my husband against me was the most telling aspect. It was precisely her tactic in high school, attempting to alienate my friends when she couldn't directly intimidate me. Different decade, same worn-out strategies. With this newfound perspective, I now comprehend that Mullen's actions extended beyond mere sibling rivalry. Throughout our formative years, she actively strived to preserve her favored child status, constantly reinforcing to both our parents and me how superior she was. She felt compelled to overshadow every single one of my accomplishments, and she made it her mission to highlight my perceived flaws to every friend I made. My reaction to her maneuvers is fundamentally different now. 10 years ago, her messages would have plunged me into self-doubt. 5 years ago, I would have felt profoundly hurt and upset. Today, quite simply, I am weary of the drama and find her transparent attempts at manipulation genuinely entertaining. My husband's response was exemplary. Instead of becoming entangled in her theatrics, he merely replied, "Thank you for your concern about Rebecca's well-being. As her husband, I am focused on supporting her happiness, not managing her behavior." I believe it's best if you direct any future concerns to Rebecca directly. Have a nice day. After failing to elicit her desired reaction, Mullins sent one final message. I see she's poisoned you against the family too. Don't say I didn't try to help when this all blows up in your faces. Ironically, Mullins' presumed attempt to assist has only further fortified my resolve to maintain distance from my family's destructive patterns. Her messages to my spouse provide irrefutable evidence that nothing has changed. She remains the same shrewd individual who insists on dictating every narrative and perceives any departure from her idealized family script as a threat. Perhaps the most gratifying aspect of this entire incident is knowing that her persuasive efforts were so utterly fruitless. Rather than driving us apart, she succeeded in drawing my husband and me closer together. Completely unperturbed by her ominous warnings of social repercussions, we lightheartedly discussed her texts and spontaneously planned a weekend getaway that evening. I have come to understand that authentic family isn't about upholding pretense or controlling stories. It's about standing united, sharing laughter, and offering unwavering support, especially when someone, even your own sister, attempts to manipulate you. I am more convinced than ever that I am better off maintaining a secure distance from Mullins' wedding drama rather than becoming enmeshed in my family's ceaseless power struggles. My husband and I have consciously chosen to focus on cultivating our own happiness. While success is often lauded as the ultimate form of retribution, I am realizing that genuine success isn't about impressing others. It's about embracing your decisions and surrounding yourself with individuals who nurture, rather than hinder, your personal growth. By this measure, I feel more accomplished than ever. Third update. 2 weeks after my sister's futile attempt to influence my husband, circumstances have taken unforeseen turns, and the situation continues to deteriorate despite my parents' desperate efforts to salvage their standing. Through various family channels, I've learned that my parents have embarked on an obsessive mission to control the narrative. They have been individually contacting relatives, accusing me of spreading malicious fabrications, claiming my envy of Mullins' ideal wedding fuels my resentment, particularly since her ceremony will be far more elaborate and magnificent than mine. Their latest fabrication posits that I deliberately excluded them from my wedding to assume the role of the victim. Amusingly, despite residing in the same home for 3 decades and utilizing the same email addresses since their inception, they now allege I sent their invitation to an outdated email and physical address. The encouraging news is that their damage control efforts are utterly failing. Our family members are not swayed. In fact, numerous relatives have begun sharing their own accounts of my parents' historical partiality. One aunt, for instance, revealed that my mother had previously orchestrated similar maneuvers at other family weddings, striving to ensure Mullin was perpetually the highlight of every gathering. The most gratifying development is the reaction from my extended family to my parents' manipulation. Key family members, some earmarked for prominent roles in the event, have withdrawn their support for Mullin's wedding. Consequently, the exclusive venue they had secured through family connections may no longer be available. Even a luxury garment business, owned by a family friend, has unexpectedly encountered scheduling conflicts. At a family gathering last weekend, tensions escalated to a breaking point. It seems that when someone innocently inquired about my wedding photographs, my mother, consumed by jealousy, launched into a furious, defensive diatribe. She asserted that I had become changed since marrying and was actively trying to destroy the family. Her public outburst backfired spectacularly, astonishing several relatives previously unaware of the underlying issues and further eroding their carefully cultivated reputation. It's profoundly ironic that my parents' frantic attempts to uphold their ideal family facade are precisely what's causing its spectacular collapse. Each time they endeavor to justify their absence from my wedding, they inadvertently reveal more about their true character. The more they try to paint me as the villain, the more acutely people perceive their deceit. Family members, previously neutral, are now distinctly aligning themselves. Recently, even my father's brother, who had always maintained silence to preserve harmony, offered a heartfelt apology for not intervening sooner regarding their treatment of me. He has now resolved to abstain from all of Mullin's wedding-related festivities, along with his entire family. I haven't needed to explicitly address any of this. The truth is diligently working on my behalf. Mullin and my parents invariably expose more of their destructive patterns whenever they attempt to distort the narrative. It's becoming clear that all those years of enduring their behavior in silence, striving to maintain peace, merely served to enable their actions. My husband articulated it best. They meticulously constructed a facade of the ideal family over many years, but it was founded on emotional manipulation and blatant partiality. Inevitably, it was destined to crumble. Personally, I am thriving. I no longer bear the weight of seeking my parents' approval. The strain of managing Mullin's emotions has dissipated. For the first time in my life, I am unburdened by the need to uphold their perfect family image. Sometimes, The most potent form of retribution is simply allowing the truth to surface organically, rather than actively pursuing it. I am truly thankful to Reddit for empowering me to advocate for myself. You cannot fathom the depth of guidance and encouragement you all have provided me on this journey. Occasionally, one needs to discover what genuine family support feels like from online strangers. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more compelling real-life stories unfolding around you.